It's Friday. Everyone loves a chippy on a Friday. So, this is a chippy on a Friday. Probably not the one you want, but there you go. This week's content is a bit different. I don't know why I'm recording it. I haven't particularly got any content of me working to put up, but I could make some tonight. I'm looking at something I could do tonight and put it up. But I've decided to make this video and I don't really know why. And I'm thinking it's probably more for me than for anyone else. So I understand if you just bin this straight off right now. Try and keep my language clean. Try and keep it as short as possible. But I figured I'm going to tell you my story after the last 6 months. So I go back, 75. And I was born to a very young couple in Mansfield. They weren't together, certainly weren't living together. A few months old, my birth mother said to her parents, who she lived with, that she wanted to go out on a Saturday night with her mates or whatever, and would they look after me, to which obviously they agreed. So she went out. That she put me to bed in a drawer, in a chest of drawers at the time. I mean, I'm assuming a bottom one, but I don't know this. But in a drawer in a chest of drawers at the time, because I couldn't afford a cot or a crib or anything like that. And out she went, and she didn't come back. A couple of months down the line, her sister, my auntie, took me in, and I stayed with her for a couple of years. Was apparently perfectly happy little toddler, just going into preschool or creche or whatever on earth it was back then. One day there's a knock at the front door, and it was my birth mother, and she said, "I've come to take the baby," which was me. Auntie's obviously distraught, rings social services because surely she can't do that, and was told basically in effect she can do exactly what she wants because legally she's my mother and there's been nothing legally signed or done to change that. So she took me and she got on a bus, and she went on a bus into the middle of Nottingham and put me straight up for adoption, because in effect she didn't want me, but her sister wasn't having me either. From there I went into a foster home for a period of time, withdrew completely, wouldn't speak to anyone. Eventually my adoptive parents came to test drive me, or whatever happens in that situation. My adoptive father managed to get through to me, and they decided that I was the child that they wanted to adopt. They were in the process of moving down to North London for work. They're both medical professionals, and they were basically told to move down, get settled, and then come and get me, to which they basically said, absolutely not. We're going and he's coming with us. They had whatever fight they had to have, and they won, and we moved down south. My adoptive mother's one of the most amazing women in the world. I can remember her working. I can remember going to work at night at the weekends with my father, because he was working nights at the hospital in the path lab, and I had sofas set up that I could sleep on, and things like that, while my mum went and worked night shifts and day shifts. I remember her doing Marie Curie. Like, she always grafted and she always did the best for us. I'm not going to talk in great detail about my adoptive father on this video for my own reasons. Fast forward to 86-ish, my dad's had enough of the rat race. Had enough of living in Hertfordshire, which is where we lived at the time. Wanted to move somewhere with land and a bigger house and away from the grind and all the rest of it. So he found a farmhouse in Lincolnshire, big 5-bedroom things, few acres of land that he said he was going to breed prize bulls on, funnily enough. Never did that, but he said it. And we moved up here, and it was literally in the middle of nowhere. It was 5 miles from the nearest town. It was 7 miles from the town I went to school in. It was 1.5 miles away from the nearest main road, down a private road, and it was massively isolated. So by default, I was relatively isolated in my early teenage years. Started hanging around when I could get there in the town I went to school in, got in with a bit of a crowd and turned into a bit of a tow rag. Got into numerous scrapes, got into trouble with old Bill. I was always angry, and I was always fighting, and I was always just wanting to get up to no good, you know. Got to 16 and a bit and moved out into said town. Got my first flat, which was a little bedsit place. Again, crap crowd, a bunch of hooligans, big drinkers, even at that age. Allowed the wrong people to stay over, who then in effect didn't leave. Got to the point where I left the flat with other people in it and moved to a neighbouring town with a girl that I was seeing at the time, and they trashed the place, and my dad, who was down as like guarantor on the flat or whatever, he went round and fixed it up and squared it all up. From there I moved to the town that we live in now a couple of years later. Met someone in 95. Met a girl in a nightclub when I just got back from a few months working away as a salesman. I was sort of flitting from sales job to sales job, as was the nature of the time back then, you know, back when door-to-door salesmen were a thing. She fell pregnant almost instantly with my daughter, who's now, God, what year is it? 2022. She's got to be 26. My maths is awful, it's been a long day. Who's 26. So we stayed together, we got married, decided we weren't having any more kids. A number of years later, marriage isn't going great. Decided to have another son, which we did, or another child, which turned out to be my eldest son. Almost straight after that, had my youngest son. There's about a year in between them. So that was it. Married, 3 kids, mortgage, house. Life's good. Can't mess this up. And then I cheated on my wife. And it's not big and it's not clever. And it was a horrible thing to do. If you want silver linings, even though the person that I cheated on my wife with is I am not with now, as we'll come to, she is my best friend and she's the mother of my godson. So for that, something good's come out of it. But me and the ex-wife split up. I moved in with this other young lady. Daughter basically didn't talk to me for years, or she did, but it was strained and difficult. My new partner had her issues. I was starting to realise that I had issues. Just before I'd split with my ex-wife, I should go back and say, through the adoption agency, I actually found my birth mother. So I contacted her and we met up. And from day one, there was something that made me uneasy, you know. And she wanted to put everything behind us and this, that and the other, and I wasn't there. Didn't take me long to find out that, again, for reasons I'm not going to go into, she displayed behaviours which are abhorrent to me. Is exactly the sort of person that I avoid like the absolute plague, and I'd had a bit of a narrow miss. She refused to tell me anything about my birth father, pretty much, other than that he was a scumbag and this, that and the other, blah blah blah. But also met her sister, which was the woman that brought me up for those 2 years, and she's wonderful. She's wonderful. She's got a wonderful daughter, Lindsay. She's got a wonderful son, Liam. She's got another daughter, Rachel. Wonderful grandkids. They're just an ace family. They came to my wedding when I married my current wife, and I love them to bits, and they're amazing. So, you know, good thing come out of that. Fast forward again, back to where I was with the new partner. She had her issues, started to realise I had mine. We worked together at the time. She lost her job at our employer. I went off sick because my head went, and I was suddenly woken up to the fact that I had serious depression and anxiety issues. Was in a really dark place, and having someone else who suffers as well, love it a bit, but probably wasn't the most healthy thing in the world for either of us, and we were both kind of self-perpetuating. So we went up and down. Our relationship didn't, but you know, our moods and our things like that, our depression went up and down. All of a sudden I get a phone call from my birth mother's auntie out of the blue, say she was at a car boot on the Saturday, and she just literally bumped into my birth father, told him, we were at a festival at the time, told him that she'd been in contact with me and would I like to meet him. So we arranged that, and he came over and I met him, and we had an amazing day. We clicked and we got on, and we kind of look alike. Don't tell him I said it, but he must be a good looking bloke if I look like him. And I met his son and his daughter, Becky and Jake, my half brother and half sister, who were both amazing. I mean, Jake's possibly one of the most talented musicians I've ever heard in my life. Met him again a second time, and he met my kids. We went over in holidays, we went for breaks at their place, and for a period of 6 months it was amazing, and we got on really well, and we were building bridges. He then split up from the person he was with and met someone else, and I just stopped hearing from him. A couple of years after that, his cousin got married, and we were invited, me and my then partner were invited. We went to the wedding, and he made all the apologies, and it'll never happen again, and this, that and the other. And I said to him, right, you know what, I'll give you one shot, but you don't ever do that to me, and more importantly, you don't do that to my kids, because my two boys used to get quite upset, saying they wanted to go and see Grampy and stuff, and nobody upsets my kids. That's it. 3 months later, we haven't heard from him again, and I just binned it off. I'd lived this long without him, I could carry on, and that's what I did, and I've not really heard from him since, and I'm quite comfortable from that. His brother, my uncle Ian, I'm still in contact with through social media and things, see him when I can. My brother Jake I speak to, my half brother Jake, my half brother Kieran, and Becky, my half sister, I speak to when I can, and that's that. Got to the point in me and my ex's relationship that she wanted kids and I didn't, and things started getting strained, and then I met my now wife. Me and my ex-partner ended, and that's all I'm going to say about that, because she's now my best friend, and you know, I love her to bits, and so does my wife. And I met my now wife, who's just, I ain't got words. I haven't got words. She's my safe place. She's my favourite. She's pretty damn near perfect, you know. Met her and we were living in a bit of a crap hole in town, in Grimsby. And we got burgled a couple of times, once before me and her got together, once just after. My car got vandalised. We caught the burglars, and because I assisted in catching them, my car got repeatedly vandalised. And my wife's parents said, you two need to get out. You need to get out of this area. She was brought up in a really nice village where I live now, on the outskirts of Grimsby. Why don't you buy a house there and I just said quite simply, I'm not in a position to buy a house there. So they helped us, and now we live in the village, and it was mega. And for years my mental health just ran, and it was fine, and you have the odd blip, but it was nothing I couldn't deal with at all. And I was off medication, and I was doing alright, you know. And then we got to 2019. In 2019, my cousin Alice passed at 41 years old, leaving a baby and her husband behind, and it hit me like a truck. I mean, it really hit me like a truck. The night before, then the pandemic hit. The night before lockdown, or sorry, 2 or 3 nights before lockdown was imposed, I did a charity head shave. I had hair all the way down my back. Did charity head shave in one of my favourite pubs in town. Raised a few grand for the charity that looks after her, Alice, Mummy's Star, the charity that looked after Alice through her pregnancy. Then they hit us with lockdown. Now, part of the reason my mental health had been so good for such a long stretch of time was not just my wife, it was my circle of friends who are, they're family, they're not friends, they're amazing, and I look forward to every weekend. And it's not about going out and getting leathered or whatever, it's just about seeing them, because we have so much fun and so many laughs, and it just keeps me going. Even on a crap week, you think it's all right, on Saturday night we're going to go, or we go Saturday afternoon and watch the football, or we're going to do whatever, and we're going to see my friends, and it's amazing. I mean, I've completely missed my wedding in 2016 out of this, and in the interest of trying to film it in one take, I'm just going to have to be a bit to and for. 2016, married Kitty, in the most amazing day ever. We made our wedding into kind of a faux festival. We had 2 sets of live music. My wife broke her dressing gown, what the hell? My wife broke her wedding dress headbanging to Killing in the Name of, being played live by our friends in Decoy. Mark from Decoy is the guy that plays the music that runs over a lot of my videos, my woodworking and turning videos and things. It was just that kind of day, you know. All our friends were there, family. It was unbelievable. And then a 2-week honeymoon in Turkey in a 5-star resort was just out of this world. Last holiday we went on, to be fair, a foreign holiday. Back to lockdown. Within days, I'm climbing the walls and I'm starting to crack. So my wife had said, you know, there's a couple of pallets, we'd had some stuff delivered, gravel or whatever, for the garden. Why don't you build some planters that you said you were going to build? So I come in here one Saturday evening with a case of beer and a handsaw, and I built a garden bench with a planter attached to each end. From that, I decided I wanted a shed. So I found the most knackered, rotten old shed I could find. The floor was rotten, the roof was rotten, but it was free. So I picked that up and rebuilt it in the garden. From that, I put a fence up. From that, I decided I wanted to do things with pallets, and built a wood store, hidden away in a corner of the garden behind some fencing that I put up. And I thought, yeah, this might be something I'm going to do. I got my first order for something from a customer, recommendation from my brother Bex, and I got an order for a cat kennel. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a cat kennel, but I got an order for one and I made it, and it went down very well, and I started advertising it, and the Chippystu page on Facebook was born, and it went from there. So I decided that because I'm doing this stuff a bit more regularly now and a bit more seriously now, I need a bench. And I'll take you back to last week's video and go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. But I built my workbench, and just before I finished it, one of my closest friends' father died, Andy, man I used to call Pops, little Scottish man, woodworking genius, who makes pirate galleons and historical boats out of wood pieces this big, and he made, you know, like Romany caravans out of wood pieces. The guy was an absolute artisan, and he passed, and it was on my wife and I's wedding anniversary, and I'm just pleased that we were able to be there for Shano at that time. A couple of days later, as I said last week, Shano's sister is wanted some scrap wood to make a planter or something like that, whatever, and I said I had some in the workshop. She came over, I opened the door, she took one look at the desk, the bench, and said, "Did you make that?" And I said yes, and she said, "Dad'd be so proud, and that's why this bench will never go anywhere, because it's my favourite thing. Sod the thousands of pounds I've spent on tools in here, that's my favourite thing," because of the fact she said that Pops would be proud of me for making it. We get to 2021 and I'm struggling, but refusing to admit it. I'm doing more and more woodworking. I was starting to do more artistic stuff. I'd made some money over Christmas and things like that, some good money over Christmas and things like that. I was really starting to get into it, but the more I was doing that, the more my head was going, and the more time I was locking myself away in here, because it was my safe place, it was my hiding place. And I'd come home from work and come in here, and my wife would stick her head around the door and say tea's ready, and I'd come home or eat tea, or worse, sometimes if I was in the middle of something, I'd bring it in here and eat it while I was working, and I would then either come back in here or stay in here. More often than not, she'd be in bed by the time I came out, and I'd go to bed. Then my mum passed. Steve got stomach cancer, and fought the living hell out of it, but ultimately lost the fight. I don't want to talk too much about him because I just don't, and it blew me apart. It completely blew me apart. I borderline lived in here. Gets to the middle of summer last year, and my wife tells me that she doesn't know if she can do it anymore, because it's like living with a roommate who happens to sleep in the same bed. She barely sees me. She can literally see me for 10 minutes on any given day, and she can't do it anymore. And I begged her and I promised her and I told her that I'd work on it. A couple of weeks after that, I went. Can't remember, I can't even remember what the trigger was, but I went. For months and months I'd been getting just red misting over nothing, and I'd go from fine to throwing stuff around and breaking stuff up, and head completely gone in a second. And Kitty had begged me and begged me and begged me and said, "You need to speak to someone," and I said no, because if I go to the doctor he'll put me back on meds, and I'm not going back on meds. I've not been on them for 10 years and I'm not going to do it anymore. It's going to be a long old video, this one, I'm sorry. And I can't remember what the trigger was, but I went, and I completely went, and I was launching stuff around this place. And I mean, you've only got to look there. There's a wall full of chisels there, there's another one there, there's a bloody sharp saw there, there's another one there, there's another one there. This room, this shop's just full of things that can seriously mess you up. Kitty shut herself in the bedroom, locked herself in the bedroom, because she was scared that I was going to hurt myself. Not hurt myself as in self-harm, but hurt myself because, you know, I was out of control and there's all this dangerous shit now. And I wound up sitting on the floor just there, holding my knees, rocking backwards and forwards, sobbing my heart out, saying I can't do it anymore, I can't do it anymore, I can't do it anymore. An hour later I texted a colleague from work and said, gave him a very, very brief outline of what had gone on, and said I need help. I think that was the Thursday, On the Monday, I went back to the GP. The GP put me back on medication, which I've been taking ever since, and I'll be taking it for as long as I need to take it. I've seen that now. My boss, who's mega, she's mega. She can be a right pain, you know, she can be a right pain, but she's mega. She rang me the next day, listened to me spill, referred me to our occupational health for counselling. I'd had counselling in the past and really hated it. I felt like I was being judged, and I knew I was drinking way too heavily. And obviously I do beer reviews and I have a beer most evenings, but I was drinking to excess every single night of the week, and it was becoming to be an issue. She referred me to counselling. I had a series of counselling sessions through occupational health, which were remote over the phone, and they were absolutely fantastic, and they did loads for me. When the counselling finished, my wife said to me, excuse the pun, but if you stop talking, you're mental, because every week when I come home and you've had a counselling session, you're absolutely buzzing, you've got stuff off your chest and all the rest of it. But the sort of going to counselling that wasn't remote just wasn't for me, so I avoided it for a couple of weeks until one of my colleagues at work, who's a facilitator for Andy's Man Club, said, why don't you come along on a Monday? So I did, and it's one of the best things I've ever done, and it's maybe the reason for this video. I went on the first week and I was terrified, and I'd avoided it for a couple of weeks and made excuses, and ultimately Shane from over the road, Pops his lad, in effect frog marching me there, saying that obviously he wanted to go for his own reasons too, so I went with him. And I'd said to the lad at work that, look, I'll come along, but I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to sit there and watch and see what happens and see how it goes. And the ball come round to me and they couldn't shut me up, and I just spilled. And the week after that was the last one before Christmas, and I did miss it, but I've not missed another one since. I started getting better, obviously the medication taking effect. I went back to work. I'd been signed off for work for 3 months. I didn't go to work all over Christmas. I was here every day struggling to get out of bed, unless it was a counselling day, and then I'd get up and I'd do my counselling and stuff. There was days I could lay in bed till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and only get up so that I could nip for a cup of tea with my mate and see my godson. But yeah, about a month after Christmas, I go to Andy's one night. Can't remember the date, but it was a bad day. It was the anniversary. It was Steve's birthday, is what it was. So yeah, it was Steve's birthday, or would have been. And it was the worst day I'd had in a long time. And I sat there in that room with all those blokes and I cried, which is something I thought I'd never do in front of a bunch of strangers. A lot of them I knew, but that's not me, you know, that's not me at all. But I sat there and I cried, and then I felt better, and I listened to everyone else's stories and the things everyone else was going through, and some of them got upset, and we got stuff off our chest, and we drank coffee, and then you have a bit of a laugh at the end. We try and lighten it a little bit at the end. And at the end of it, they asked me if I'd like to join the facilitation team. And it's one of the most amazing things that I've ever been asked. It's such an honour, because it's such an amazing deal. Andy's Man Club is such an amazing deal. And to have them ask me to be a part of that, right, it blew my tiny mind. It absolutely blew my tiny mind. But it also woke something in me, if that makes sense. And the fact that they saw me as someone that could make a difference to others is something I gripped. So I'd started promoting it really heavily at work. I then, a couple of weeks ago, got offered a free college course, distance learning, on mental health first aid and mental health advocacy in the workplace. And I have serious concerns, and it's not my employer, it's every employer, and I get that, but I can only speak for my employer. And I have serious concerns about the understanding and education in mental health and mental illness in an employer, in my employer and in any employer. So taking the course was a no-brainer. So I did that. I handed my first assignment in yesterday. Last week I was contacted by a member of the National Health and Wellbeing team from my employer, asking me if I would work alongside them in promoting Andy's Man Club and similar type situations throughout our business nationally, which again is mind-blowing. And the opportunity to be able to push this means everything to me. And the whole time doing this is making me feel better. And I was doing all right anyway. I'd had a succession of good weeks with a couple of hiccups, but a succession of good weeks. But even now, coming off the phone to the woman from head office, I was on top of the world, and it's making me feel better. And it all stemmed from that day when, as I put it, my head went pop and I went through Kitty and said I need help. And it was something I'd not said ever. As it turns out, through the counselling I had through work, all the tearaway stuff and a lot of the things I talked about in my teenage years, early 20s and things like that, direct all the way back to the situation with my birth parents in the first few years of my life, whether I realise it or not, apparently, because it's not something I consciously think about at any time, really, if I'm honest. But it stems back to a separation thing from them. I also, when I met my birth father, found out that on his side of the family there is a genetic history of depression and anxiety. So, hey, he gave me something. We'll give him that, eh? Sorry, I shouldn't joke about it. And it all of this feeling better and all of this making this video and being able to stand in now and make this video, as stupid as I feel making it, if I'm honest, comes from the first time I asked for help and actually started to talk. And the Andy's Man Club mantra there, it's okay to talk, couldn't be truer. Suicide's the single biggest killer in men under 45 in the UK. That's terrifying. That's a scary thought. Any of you, and I know it's a bloke thing, but there is a relatively new club called First Ladies, and it's the same thing for ladies. So male or female, look up First Ladies, look up Andy's Man Club. I believe we've got over 70 venues. Andy's Man Club's got over 70 venues nationally now. If you Google them, throw the hashtag into your social media, whatever, it'll direct you to your website, and there's a list of their venues up and down the country. Go and check them out. It's so relaxed. You literally, if you check my Facebook, I did a Facebook Live on Monday night from street to seat, just showing you kind of what to expect, where you get to turn up at our local club. But you walk in and you make a brew, or someone will walk you in and make you a brew, and you sit down and you just get as much or as little off your chest as you want to. And you don't have to give your name, you don't have to sign up, there's no appointments. You can come once a month, you can come once a week, you can come 3 times a year. Nobody cares. Nobody judges you and nobody's bothered. Just come when you need us. You don't have to have mental ill health. You could have just had a crap week at work or whatever. Come and have a rant, because that's what we do. For whatever reason, come and have a rant, come and get stuff off your chest. But come on, Andy's, because as bittersweet it is when new people come through the door, because straight away that means in some way you're struggling. We love seeing you, and we would much rather you came to us and offloaded than stayed at home and kept it in. So come and see us. Thanks for listening. That's like a 35-minute video. I had no idea I was going to be able to talk for this long about all this crap. I'm sorry if I've bored you, but thanks for listening. That's me for this week. New lathe gets delivered on Monday. I think that next week when it gets delivered, I'm going to do a build video and quick first impressions type gig on the new toy, in theory, and that'll be next week's content. Until then, you know the score. Like, share, thumbs up, thumbs down, comment, good or bad, I don't care. I don't get offended. You don't hurt my feelings, so if it's a bad comment, I'll take it. It is what it is, you know. Most importantly, subscribe, because honestly, if you've sat through 36.5 minutes of this nonsense, then you've got the patient of the saint, and you've also clearly got nothing better to do. So hit the button and have it. See you next week.